Every super soldier in Marvel came from a formula, but almost none of those formulas worked twice. Which serum actually succeeded, and which ones destroyed the people who took them? Let's find out. Soviet variant Red Guardian. Before Captain America ever became a household name, another nation was already racing to catch up, and for once, their gamble actually paid off. In the final years of the Cold War, the Soviet Union finally cracked a version of the super soldier formula, and it went to a soldier named Alexei Shostakov. The results were immediate. His strength, stamina, and reflexes jumped to a level no ordinary soldier could match. The Soviets didn't hide what they had built. They gave him a title instead, Red Guardian, their answer to America's growing super soldier program. On paper, he was every bit Captain America's equal. In practice, there was always a gap. His raw power matched the Winter Soldier's almost exactly. But the precision, the discipline, the years of refined combat training that made Bucky Barnes so lethal, Shostakov never quite had that. He was powerful, but not perfected. A weapon built in a hurry, rather than shaped over time. But if the Soviets got a version that almost worked, America's own government was about to prove just how far they were willing to go to get a version that fully did. U.S. Government Serum Isaiah Bradley. If the Soviet story is about a program that almost got it right, this one is about a program that got it right, and then punished the man who proved it. After Steve Rogers became living proof the serum worked, the American government wanted more soldiers like him, fast. The problem was simple. Nobody actually had Erskine's real formula anymore. So researchers began testing altered, unstable versions of it. And instead of using volunteers who understood the risk, they turned to African-American soldiers, who were never given a real choice in the matter. Most of them didn't survive what came next. Only one man's body adapted. Isaiah Bradley walked away from the experiments not just alive, but transformed, carrying strength and speed that rivaled Rogers himself. During the Korean War, he was sent on a mission most soldiers wouldn't have survived, going head-to-head with the Winter Soldier and actually winning. And for that success, his own government imprisoned him. For years afterward, his blood was drawn again and again by the same agencies that once used him, Hydra included. But America's failures didn't stop with Bradley, because Hydra was running its own experiments at the same time, on soldiers they'd captured straight off the battlefield. Prototype Serum Red Skull. Before Captain America ever stood on a battlefield, the very research that created him had already failed once, and that failure walked away wearing a face that no longer looked human. In the early 1930s, a scientist named Abraham Erskine was quietly developing a formula in Germany designed to push the human body past its natural limits. That research didn't stay secret for long. A Hydra operative managed to steal his early findings, years before the world even understood what a super soldier was. By 1940, with the Second World War already tearing through Europe, Hydra refused to wait for a finished formula. They took what they had, an early, unrefined version of Erskine's work, and injected it into a man named Johann Schmidt. The results came fast, and they came violently. His strength surged dramatically, but his body had no defense against what the formula was actually doing to him. The serum didn't enhance Schmidt so much as tear through him, twisting his features until nothing human remained. That disfigured result is the reason the world would come to know him not as Johann Schmidt, but as Red Skull. That failure taught Erskine exactly what his formula still needed, and it would take one more volunteer to finally get it right. Perfected Serum Captain America. Everything after this traces back to a single night in 1943, because that's the only time the formula was ever used exactly as intended. After fleeing Germany, Erskine continued his work in the United States, under the Strategic Scientific Reserve, eventually launching Project Rebirth, a classified program built around one goal: a single perfect soldier rather than an army of unstable ones. His volunteer was a thin, sickly young man named Steve Rogers, chosen not for his physical condition, but for something no formula could manufacture: character. Using equipment developed with Stark Industries and a controlled dose of Vita Ray radiation, the exact piece missing from Schmidt's failed attempt, Rogers transformed as agonizing as it was precise. When it ended, his strength, speed, and reflexes had all reached the absolute ceiling of human potential, with none of the instability that ruined every version before him. The program's success, though, ended almost as fast as it began. A Hydra assassin murdered Erskine within moments of the experiment's completion, taking the only complete formula with him. Rogers wasn't just Project Rebirth's greatest success, he became its only one. But Hydra had already seen enough of the formula to start their own version, and they weren't going to test it on volunteers. Hydra Serum Winter Soldier. In 1943, Hydra began rounding up captured Allied soldiers, treating them not as prisoners of war, but as raw material for a scientist named Arnim Zola, whose entire mission was reverse engineering whatever had made Rogers so powerful. After extensive, brutal trials, Zola finally produced a version that worked. Among the captured soldiers was Bucky Barnes. Injected against his will, his outward appearance barely changed, but his body quietly gained strength, agility, and endurance that rivaled Rogers himself. That hidden power saved his life during a mission gone wrong, when a fall that should have killed him instead left him alive, though missing an arm. Hydra didn't let that chance go to waste. They fitted him with a mechanical arm built to work seamlessly with his enhanced body, then went further, using years of psychological conditioning to erase who he'd been entirely. What walked out of that program wasn't Bucky Barnes anymore. It was the Winter Soldier, Hydra's most efficient, most obedient weapon, Howard Stark's serum, new Winter Soldiers. For decades after Erskine's death, his original formula stayed lost, until one man refused to accept that. By December 1991, Howard Stark had spent years quietly working backward from a single sample of Steve Rogers' blood, and he finally succeeded in reconstructing something close to the real thing, the closest anyone had come since Erskine himself. But Hydra had been watching, waiting for exactly this breakthrough. The moment they learned Stark had cracked it, they sent the Winter Soldier to eliminate him and his wife Maria, and to walk away with the serum they'd been chasing for half a century. They injected a select group of their most elite operatives, creating an entire new generation of Winter Soldiers, stronger and more resilient than anything Zola's earlier formula had ever produced, since this version no longer needed the radiation exposure that once made the process so fragile. One of them even beat the original Winter Soldier in a training match, proof of just how far this new formula had advanced. But power without stability is never really power. It's a countdown. Every soldier injected began showing the same pattern: extreme aggression, uncontrollable violence, a mind slowly consumed by the very strength meant to serve it. Replica serums, Centipede program. After Hydra collapsed, the serum didn't disappear, it just changed hands. The CIA brought in a scientist named Wilfred Nagel and handed him something no one else had ever had access to: preserved blood samples, taken directly from Isaiah Bradley. Nagel finally accomplished what generations of scientists before him couldn't: a formula stable enough for direct self-injection. By 2024, he had 20 working vials sitting in a lab, the most refined Super Soldier Serum in history. It didn't stay there long. Carly Morgenthau stole every last one of them, injecting herself and handing 7 more to her fellow flag smashers. 11 vials were destroyed soon after by Helmut Zemo, determined to keep the formula from spreading any further. Only one survived that purge, and it eventually found its way into the hands of a soldier desperate to prove himself. That single surviving vial ended up with John Walker, and what he did with it changed everything that came next. American recreated variant, Emil Blonsky/Abomination. By May 2010, under General Thaddeus Ross, the American military had finally rebuilt a working version of the serum, and this time, they weren't testing on an unwilling stranger. Emil Blonsky volunteered, receiving the formula through a series of deep tissue and bone marrow injections designed to enhance his strength, speed, and endurance far beyond ordinary limits. At first, it worked exactly as intended. Blonsky became a genuinely capable super soldier, faster and stronger than anyone around him. But this recreated formula still carried the instability that haunted almost every version before it: spinal deformities, muscle distortion, and a creeping aggression that only grew worse the longer it stayed in his system. Rather than stop, Blonsky pushed further, undergoing an additional procedure that fused the serum with gamma-irradiated blood taken from Bruce Banner himself. The combination didn't enhance him, it broke him, transforming his body into a massive, rage-driven creature that would become known as the Abomination, a being whose raw strength could genuinely rival the Hulk's, even if his mind, at least in the beginning, had none of Banner's control left in it. And once gamma radiation entered the equation, the serum stopped being just a soldier's weapon. It became something capable of creating monsters instead. Gamma Serum. Bruce Banner Hulk. If Blonsky's failure proved gamma radiation could break a super soldier, the US military decided to chase that same danger on purpose. In 2005, General Thaddeus Ross greenlit a classified initiative known as Project Gamma Pulse, built around one goal: engineering a new breed of enhanced soldier using radiation instead of the old Vita Ray method. To lead it, he brought in Dr. Bruce Banner, a scientist whose expertise in biochemistry and gamma physics made him the only man qualified to attempt something this reckless. Banner theorized that gamma energy could act as a far more powerful catalyst for cellular enhancement than anything used before it. He didn't test that theory on a soldier, he tested it on himself. The experiment went wrong almost instantly, and what emerged from it wasn't a stronger version of Bruce Banner. It was something else entirely. An enormous, green-skinned being whose strength scaled directly with rage rather than training or discipline. For years, Banner and the creature he'd created existed as two separate identities, trapped in the same body, constantly fighting for control of it. No serum before this one had ever scaled that far past human limits, and none of them had ever come this close to losing control completely. But even the Hulk's power had a ceiling, and one final program was about to be built specifically to break past it. Project Sentry Serum, Bob Reynolds Void. Every formula on this list was built to enhance a soldier. This one was built to create something beyond a soldier entirely. Project Sentry was designed with a single, almost reckless ambition: to produce the most powerful enhanced being that had ever existed, surpassing every version that came before it, Rogers included. Bob Reynolds' body didn't just survive the formula, it absorbed it completely, granting him strength, speed, and durability that made every previous super soldier look ordinary by comparison. He could take damage that should have ended him permanently and simply come back from it, regenerating within minutes, even after being killed outright by a built-in kill switch meant to control him. He was powerful enough to single-handedly overwhelm the Thunderbolts, a team that included several enhanced soldiers among its own ranks. But this formula's price was unlike anything before it. Instead of instability or aggression, it split Reynolds in two, creating a second consciousness inside him known as the Void, a being of pure shadow, capable of consuming entire cities and trapping anyone it touched inside their worst memories. Bob Reynolds didn't just become the strongest super soldier Marvel ever created. He became proof that the more power a serum gives you, the more it can take from you in return. Every serum promised strength, but almost everyone demanded something back: a body, a mind, a self. So really, was any of them ever worth it?